Very good. Okay, so today's session, we're going to continue on talking road safety audits, but we want to dive into a few sort of specific elements of road safety auditing. One is when you are asked to be involved in a team that is auditing a design and possibly some technical detailed design. So we'll be looking at that. What sort of things are we looking at and getting into a bit of road design specifics. And then we're also going to delve into temporary traffic management construction site road safety audits. And as you can see here, I've got two specialists in those areas that I've asked to come along and present and have a bit of a chat to you. So I've got Jamie Robinson, who's the technical lead at Safe System Solutions. And Jamie has a wealth of experience in technical road design, and doing road safety audits of the detailed design stage and designs, and has lots of other, sort of specialist, very technical areas. And so I thought Jamie could come along and present that. We'll hear a little bit more about Jamie's background in a minute when he begins. And then for temporary traffic management, I've got Tuan Nguyen, who is the traffic lead at Safe System Solutions. And Tuan, like Jamie, a wealth of experience across many aspects of roads and technical detail and the like and traffic, but also Tuan has spent a fair chunk of his career managing the temporary traffic management construction site, coordinating it, looking at the details of it, writing the standards and guidelines, being involved in the Austroads projects and the Australian standards. So, and does, of course, a lot of road safety auditing of temporary traffic management schemes, construction site. So Tuan will be chatting to us about that as well. But we're going to start with Jamie. So Tuan, you can take a rest for a while, or at least you can sit back and enjoy the wonderful presentations on swept path analysis and the like from Jamie. But just like usual, pop your questions into the chat, everyone, and I'll be monitoring the chat and feeding questions to Jamie as we go. I'll be we'll take our 5-minute break after Jamie's finished, and then we'll get set up for Tuan. But over to you, Jamie. You see if you can share your screen there. And I think, yep, that's looking really good. And I think one of your early slides has a little bit more about your background. So when you get to that, you can fill us in on a little bit more. Oh, there it is. I'll leave it to you to run through that and jump back, and I'll monitor the chat.
Thanks, Ken, and good morning, everyone. Jamie Robertson's my name. I'm the technical lead. As Ken mentioned, in a former life, I worked for Vic Roads, now the Department of Transport and Planning, in traffic engineering and road design roles. At Safe System Solutions, I do a lot in that design space still, and we do a huge number of audits. So here today to talk to you particularly about design stage audits. So I just want to start off by discussing the difference between a road safety audit and a design review, or a standards review, as they're sometimes referred to. As an auditor, you really do need to focus in on safety. Design standards are many and varied. Sorry, got a difficulty here. And it's not necessarily the case that a design that isn't in accordance with standards is unsafe. Conversely, a design can meet all relevant standards, yet still be unsafe in some way. So as an auditor, you really need to think about the implications of a design and perhaps a non-conformance with a standard on safety. You really need to put yourself in the shoes or in the driver's seat of a road user and think about whether or not you would feel safe or be safe. By all means, refer to relevant standards where it might support your thinking, but don't be consumed by whether or not a design meets standards or not. Within a given design standard or guideline, there's often a range of acceptable values, It's often the case when we combine minimum values for different road design elements that we do get into trouble. So the focus of this presentation is detailed design stage audits and also the role of heavy vehicles. And that's for a couple of reasons. Heavy vehicles really do dictate a lot of our road designs. The design vehicle, together with the design speed, affects many of our geometric design elements, horizontal and vertical geometry, our intersection designs. It influences sight distance and many other aspects of road design. And the other part of the equation with heavy vehicles is that heavy vehicles are hugely overrepresented in the crash problem on our road. So it's really important that we do focus on the needs of those larger vehicles. So we talk about design vehicles in road design. That's the largest vehicle that is expected to use a piece of road on a regular basis. We make assumptions around what that vehicle will be, and Austroads provides us with some reference vehicles, which include service vehicles, B doubles, and there are many others. The speed environment, don't confuse the design speed with the operating or the posted speed limit for a road. In most states, it's the case that we design for a higher speed than we post a speed limit at. So understand what the design speed of a road is. Vehicle swept paths should be prepared as an integral part of road and intersection design. Any road project should have some traffic volume information available for it. Pedestrian and cyclists may not be present. We're talking about design stage audits, but on the most part, design projects are upgrades to existing roads. So we can look at the crash history of the site. Some auditors I know prefer not to do this. They don't want to put the blinkers on, so to speak, and be focused on certain crash types, knowing that crashes often are of a quite random nature. But I do like to have the crash history of a site just to pick up if there are any trends that are present at a particular site. Any previous audit reports can be valuable information. If we're auditing at the detailed design stage of a project, it's quite possible that an audit was undertaken at the existing conditions stage or the concept design level stage. So this list of information is a list of things that you might want to have or probably should consider as part of a road safety audit. It's not an exhaustive list. There might be other things that you might think are useful or relevant to you as an auditor to help you understand, I guess, the context of the project. I want to step through now a number of common issues that we find when auditing projects at the design stage. The first is around the choice of design vehicle. So that's that largest vehicle that we'd expect to see use a road on a regular basis. A design might not cater adequately for that vehicle. So in other words, there mightn't be enough space for that vehicle to navigate the road or particularly the intersection, or the choice of the design vehicle might be incorrect in the first place. You can put yourself out there on site and observe vehicles getting around. Think about changes in land use, future land uses that might influence the number and type of vehicles at a location. For any particular location or intersection, it's common to have different design vehicles for different movements. So think about that as well. So what does it mean if we do get that wrong? Some of the issues are listed there. We get large vehicles encroaching areas that they shouldn't. That might be into adjacent traffic lanes, perhaps for sideswipe crashes. Perhaps they'll cut the corner and encroach a pedestrian area. There might be conflicts between concurrently turning vehicles, and a telltale sign of there not being enough space is impacts with roadside furniture or curbs. You can see damage or tyre marks, knockdown signs, and so on. So this list of issues are basically about there not being enough space to accommodate larger vehicles, which is certainly an issue. We can go too far the other way. If we adopt a vehicle that is too large or larger than it should be, that can lead to excessively large pavement areas, which can be hard to delineate. They can allow smaller vehicles to make movements at excessive speeds. So too much space can also be an issue.
Jamie, of those two, sort of having too generous swept paths and being concerned for smaller vehicles shooting through fast, taking curves fast and the like, versus not catering for larger vehicles, which do you see more often, and which are you, I suppose, more concerned with, or is that sort of very context specific?
Yeah, it is quite a case-by-case situation, but certainly I see more of the situation where there's not enough space. Perhaps land use has changed, or we're looking to grant access to larger vehicles to a particular road, and there isn't enough space within the existing infrastructure. So not being enough space is typically the issue that arises. So how do we check if there is enough space or the right amount of space? Well, we can consult Austroad's guidance, the Guides to Road Design Part 4, the Austroad's Turning Templates Guide as well. Those documents spell out specific requirements for catering for turning vehicles. They help you make the choice of design vehicle when you're generating swept paths. They provide guidance on the radii that are appropriate, clearance requirements between vehicles turning in different situations, as you can see in the examples there. So here we've got a semi-trailer making right turns. In one instance, we've got two abreast, turning right at a minimum radius of 15 metres. Austroads provides a number of typical radii, and they relate to different speeds. So if we've got a situation that's a mandatory stop requirement, we can really wind back the radius to the minimum and assume that a vehicle is making a turn at a really low speed. But a situation where a vehicle might arrive at an intersection and not have to give way, perhaps get a green arrow, we need to be more generous and assume a larger turning radius and speed.
And Jamie, the questions are starting to come in thick and fast, which is great. A lot of interest in swept path analysis and sort of understanding how decisions are made within road safety audits. What's an issue, what's not, and what do we look at? So a couple of first, one I sort of answered. I'll just get your take on it. The swept path issues mainly occur in brownfields or greenfield sites.
Yeah, more so in brownfields where we're constrained for space. We often see, we're really sort of squeezing down our designs, trying to make them fit, and that can compromise the space that we need.
Yep, exactly as I had put, and you added a bit more detail, which was good. Now, Tony's asked a question around going to site or not for these design stage road safety audits. I can't remember if you covered this in your presentation, but we certainly do go to site for these design stage. Why do we actually go to site, Jamie, when we're just sort of looking at, sometimes, like 10 pages, 100 pages? Why are we getting out to site?
Yeah, as I've mentioned, most of the time we are talking about brownfields environments, so upgrades to existing roads, perhaps an upgrade to an existing intersection. So a lot of the time we can get out there on site and see how things are operating at present, think about the types of vehicles and road users that are present, what people are doing, what vulnerable road users are doing and need to do, and think about all the sort of potential conflicts that might occur. We can think about, constraints to the design, obstructions to sight distance, any misleading cues that might be out there on site. That there are all sorts of things that you can pick up out on site that you can't from the desktop.
Yeah. Yep. Good. Thank you. Now, Dave's asked an interesting question around sort of the specifics of the load that the design vehicle might be taking. So we talked sort of generically about these design vehicles, but they could be carrying logs or potentially fuel or some sort of liquid which would slosh around as they take turns. Is that sort of factored into your thinking, or do you just generically go a design vehicle?
Yeah, so for the purpose of swept path analysis, we use generic vehicles, and we're just concerned about, I guess, the sort of envelope or the space that that vehicle will occupy. There are situations where we're concerned about the type of load, and particularly, overturning of larger vehicles. So it's, I guess, a growing practice to do heavy vehicle simulation modelling to assess rollover risk. You might do that perhaps at a roundabout or some other location where you have a concern for heavy vehicle rollover, and it is those vehicles like log trucks, liquid loads, stock trucks, and so on that have that propensity to roll over. So you can certainly look at those things.
So in a
that
road
sort of
safety
sits outside swept path analysis.
Yeah. So in a road safety audit, are you going to do that analysis of modeling of vehicle rollover, or even or just the swept path analysis, or neither of those? The scope of a road safety audit as
Yeah, an audit typically wouldn't include either of those things unless it was perhaps a specific request, but that would be in the domain of the designer, and the auditor would review the information that was presented to them and raise concerns if they had any around what was presented to them, or the fact that they weren't provided with that information. If you're not provided with swept paths, that can be a real red flag. They should be provided as part of a detailed design, or at least readily available. And if they're not, that can raise some questions.
Yeah, that's right. We don't want as auditors be caught up in doing these other things outside of the usual road safety audit, unless that's been a separate agreement you've had. But yeah, we're not doing the swept path analysis or the rollover modeling or anything like that. We may review it, we may incorporate the thinking or some of the findings into our audit if we're concerned about that. But if we don't have those and we've got concerns, we would just recommend that they undertake that activity and check it. So that's more important there for us as auditors. So don't get worried if you think, oh, well, how do I do a swept path analysis? And I don't have the software or these sorts of things. As a road safety auditor, we'd be reviewing it, and there's some tricks with that, which Jamie will get to shortly. Another question's come in, which is indications people have some experience with all this. What is the approximate percentage of buffer? So on top of the standards, do you assume with respect to speed and turning radius, or do you just take it as is noted?
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand that question.
I read it as, do you add a safety factor on what, like an extra bit of a factor on some of these things? So if it says in the design, I don't know, a 10K turn speed, you might go a 15 or a 20, or do you just go with what they say?
Look, as far as radius, you shouldn't go below the sort of nominated minimum radius. As far as speed, it's perhaps a little counterintuitive. If you increase the speed or increase the radius, you actually achieve a better swept path. The lower the speed and the lower the turning radius, or the smaller the radius, the more cut-in you get. So the rear axles of a long vehicle will cut in and take a shorter path than the the steering axles. So a lot of the time that sort of lower speed, lower radius turn is the critical one in terms of space.
Yep.
If that makes sense.
Yep. Okay, and one final one associated with oversize over mass vehicles. So, yeah, how do we take those into account? Actually, I think you're going to start maybe talking about this now, unless you've already talked a little bit about it.
I mentioned design vehicles before. I think I failed to mention check vehicles. So for any road design project, we typically have a design vehicle and a check vehicle. And the choice of design and check vehicle might vary between different movements, but the design vehicle is the one that we expect to come along on a regular basis. We also want to ensure that the design caters for a larger vehicle again, which we call the check vehicle, which might be that oversized vehicle that comes along once in a while. And we don't design the roadway to cater for that vehicle in such a desirable way because its movements are so infrequent and it might be under an escort or traffic management even. So we often accept that larger vehicle will encroach areas that it shouldn't, or perhaps mount a curb here and there and things like that. We need to ensure that the vehicle can get through, but we compromise on some requirements.
If associated with that, if you were sort of charged with leading a team to undertake a road safety audit of a new, I don't know, port facility or something where they're going to be trucking stuff along a route to get to a freeway or the like, would you be doing things like checking the structural adequacy of culverts and bridges and the like, or is that again outside the scope?
You wouldn't be doing the actual checks as an auditor, but it's certainly something that you probably should be thinking about and raising as potential issues.
Good. Thanks, Jamie. Lots of good questions in there, lots of discussion. So let's keep ticking along. I think you've got a few more on swept paths before we jump into another bit of a topic.
Got a few more. So swept paths these days are generated in software like AutoTurn. No more of the old transparencies sort of floating around the design office, being sort of put on top of designs and swiveled around. There's an output from showing some swept paths, and this is not a good example. So a few things to look out for. If we look at the purple swept path, the truck approaching sort of from the right and turning up the page, there's lots of lines going on, and one of those, if you can see my cursor, is the center line of the vehicle, this solid line that I'm following. Along that line, there are quite a few arrowheads. Each of those arrowheads basically represents a change in direction of the vehicle, a mouse click. And that's not something that we should be seeing on a turn within an intersection. We would like to see that vehicle be able to make that turn on a single radius, according to Austroads, and not have to do something unusual like this purple vehicle is doing. It's sort of approaching in a straight line, making a short, sharp turn, sort of straightening up again, and then turning again in an unusual way. So that's certainly not a desirable way to generate a swept path. Conveniently, there appears to be the required clearance between those concurrently turning vehicles in the middle. But had the purple vehicle been drawn in the correct way, I think you'd see quite a bit of overlap between those swept paths in the middle of the intersection. So quite a few lines going on here. We've got that center line of the vehicle. We've got dashed lines representing the wheel paths, the front and rear wheels. We've got solid lines at the edge of the swept path, sort of two parallel solid lines. The inner line represents the vehicle body, or the overhang. It's sort of the front and rear corners of the vehicle. The parallel line on the outside is a 0.5 metre offset line, and Austroad says to provide a 0.5 metre buffer between the vehicle body and any roadside furniture or curbs. It's a bit of a factor of safety to ensure that we've got enough space and to allow for the variation that we see in the way that people drive through intersections. The blue path approaching from the left is better, although not great. We can see a few little arrowheads there. This swept path diagram isn't very transparent. The radius, the turning radii aren't nominated or dimensioned on the plan in any way. So it's a little hard to check. So there's that issue in the middle of the intersection I mentioned. Some other issues that sort of may or may not be picked up by an auditor. At this corner of the intersection, if there were pedestrians present, there's obviously insufficient space there for pedestrians to get around the intersection corner, so that could be a potential issue. At the bottom left here, we can see a conduit passing through private property. So that's not something that would affect safety in any way. So shouldn't appear in a road safety audit report. If it did, it would perhaps diminish from other more serious issues. But if you pick that up, you might mention that in a covering email or something to your client. Here's a better example of a swept path diagram. You can see that these two vehicles have been drawn on a nice, smooth, single radius curve, and you can see that the radius nominated there. It's 12.5 metres to the outer wheel path. Now, that's something that does confuse some people. The radii that are nominated are typically to the outer wheel path. They talk about curb to curb radius. So if you were sort of generating a swept path in CAD, the vehicle wouldn't in fact be driving at a 12.5 metre radius. It's the 12.5 metre radius that you need to achieve at that outer wheel path effectively. So these swept paths have been drawn well, but you can see that there are some issues with vehicles encroaching into areas that they shouldn't. This corner of the intersection, the blue bus that's turning left is cutting across that intersection corner quite significantly. This is actually a design that we inherited that had some swept paths prepared for it, which showed that the intersection would work okay. And I guess they showed that a bus could navigate that left turn without doing this, but it would have to do that in quite an unusual way. Head out into the middle of the intersection and hook back really sharply, not drive in a way that you would expect someone to, and certainly not an unfamiliar driver. Here are some other movements at the same intersection, movements that would be allowed to occur concurrently under the signal phasing plan. And you can see quite some overlap between the two buses turning in and out. So again, that's something that we should try and design out and provide a more generous amount of space for those vehicles. If you're out on site, a few things to keep an eye out for that might be indicators of there not being enough space. It's common to observe evidence of vehicles tracking over and behind curbs, as you can see here. Presumably it's long trucks doing this, cutting the corner. Sometimes the curb will break up. There can be sort of fragments and loose material and so on, which can be a safety issue in itself. But this can be a pointer to there not being enough space. Other times there are other things at play. It might be that there's a lack of delineation, perhaps speeds are excessive. So it's not always the case that there isn't enough space available. At this location, it may be a little hard to make out, but we've got a raised concrete island and a concrete road pavement. So there's very little contrast between the two. The direction of travel on the road is towards us, and you can see that a lot of vehicles, again, presumably long trucks, are mounting the island and actually crossing this pedestrian waiting area here. So that's a potential safety issue. But I'd suggest that a pedestrian on the other side of the road would be much more at risk than someone waiting at this location. Someone here would be in the line of sight of an approaching driver, and you would hope that the driver would choose not to take this path over the island if someone was waiting there. But on the other side of the road, and we see this quite a lot, a turning truck or bus, the rear of the vehicle cuts the corner, mounts the curb, and strikes a pedestrian waiting at the intersection corner. And that's because it's much harder for the driver of the long vehicle to understand where the rear of their vehicle will end up than the front of it. We see lots of signs like this one knocked down, and it can be an indicator to a lack of space for turning vehicles. Not sure quite what's happened here, whether it was a turning vehicle or someone that's departed the road travelling along it. Another common example is a keep left sign or a hazard marker sign that's been knocked down on a splitter island. And that is certainly often a pointer to there not being enough space, perhaps excessive speeds on the approach, or a need to provide greater advance warning to approaching motorists. Other common issues relate to sight lines. Now, there are a lot of different sight distance requirements described in Austroads, and I won't go into them all in detail, but in a nutshell, sight distance, I guess, is intended to provide enough distance and time for the various road users to sort of perceive the situations that they're faced with and to react accordingly. So we have sight distances between vehicles, pedestrians to vehicles, and from driver eye to the road pavement, and so on. And it's often the case that the required sight distance is restricted in some way. At intersections, we often see road furniture or trees or poles or post boxes and these types of things obstruct sight lines, perhaps from a side road for a motorist entering a main road. At mid-block locations, the horizontal alignment or the vertical alignment or a combination of the two can impede sight distance. So we might have a crest that limits sight distance to the pavement or to oncoming traffic. We might have a horizontal curve with trees or other things on the inside of the curve. The last dot point there relates to angles of intersection. It's desirable at any intersection or access point for, I guess, the minor leg to approach at a right angle or as close to a right angle as possible, and that allows the motorist to see comfortably in all directions. It's where we have acute approach angles that we see that sort of Y intersection problem. It's difficult for motorists, and particularly the elderly and those with mobility impairments, to sort of look back over their shoulder when they're faced with those approach angles. So one of the sight distance requirements that we'll just touch on briefly is SISD. We might have a poll question there, do we, Ken?
Well, I might, instead of popping the poll up, just give a prize to the first person who can type in the chat what SISD stands for. But I realised we hadn't given enough prizes away, Jamie. So the poll, we don't get to give prizes out. Here we go. Some things are coming in. Safe intersection, sight distance, safe intersection. Oh, they came in pretty much the same time between Nicholas and Thai there. So safe intersection, sight distance, Jamie.
Yep, well done.
I'm going to give 2 prizes there.
So, yes, safe intersection sight distance is one of the many sight distance requirements that we have. One of the key differences between the different sight distances is the height from which we're measuring from and to. So safe intersection sight distance is intended to give enough time for a driver approaching on a main road to see a vehicle enter an intersection from a side road or an access, perhaps stall or stop for some reason in this conflict area. And we want this vehicle to be able to perceive that, to happen, react, brake, and come to a stop before reaching that point. It's measured from the driver eye to the top of that vehicle, and I think we assume 1.25 meters, which is something like the 85th or the 15th percentile rather height of a passenger vehicle. This slide also reminds me that it's important to consult any state supplements to the Austroads guides. I know in Victoria we do something a little different to this 5 metre setback or 3 metres minimum. We measure that setback relative to a conflict point rather than the edge of pavement or curb or hold line. And that sort of can take into account differences in pavement width and that might come about where you've got a left-turn deceleration lane or something like that, which increase the setback of this vehicle on the side road. Here's a little real-world example in Melbourne where we have an urban road with quite a wide carriageway. During busy traffic times when there's limited parking, the carriageway is wide enough for 4-lane operation, and that's what we would see happen. And an attempt was made to deter that behaviour by formalising parking lanes. And those parking lanes extended right up to 10 metres short of any side roads as per standards. So that had, I guess, a benefit in terms of managing the traffic flow on the road and behaviour, but it did lead to some unforeseen consequences around the intersections. It had the effect of actually encouraging parking closer to intersections than had occurred previously. And as you can see in this photo here, there's very limited sight distance available to an approaching vehicle. And a fraction of a second later, the car there is upon you. So we saw on this particular road quite an incidence of side impact crashes or intersection type crashes involving vehicles entering the main road from these side roads with limited sight distance. So I might put it over to the group now, Ken, to suggest a few mitigations. If you're auditing this site and came across this issue, what are some of the things that you might suggest be done about it?
So making some recommendations in the audit. Yeah, what do we think could be done? You've got a sight distance issue there, and something you might recommend. Okay, let's see what's coming in. A few are coming in. I'll give it a second for some others to pop their ideas in. Hope people have been counting their wallies as well. No hidden wallies on that slide, but there were a few in there. Okay, we've got a few different answers, and this is always good because there are many ways to lessen risk in in most issues out there on the road network, and we can have a look at what's coming there. So we've got some people saying, well, let's just get rid of some of the car parking spaces. Got somebody who's suggesting possibly changing it to a stop control on the side road. We've got blister curb return or a curb extension. Put the hold line further forward out. Yep. Some people with a combination of those and some landscaping as well. Lower the speed on the major road. So, Jamie, quite a range there. Do you want to give out any prizes for any of those, or did you like them all, or none?
Well, no, I like them all. Maybe give a prize to the person who said lower the speed.
Okay.
It's
on two prizes today. That's a good module. So well, maybe talk us through a few of those, Jamie. And one of the things I think is actually very relevant, because the quiz at the end of this module is all about understanding primary and supporting treatments, and also understanding likelihood and severity. Like when you're doing treatments, are they going to address likelihood and severity? So maybe as you talk through a few of those, can you sort of relate them to those?
Yeah, sure. And I like the speed reduction. And look, I don't know how feasible that would be in this particular location, but I like that one because it does address severity of the crash. I like all those suggestions. Probably the majority of them are focused on reducing the crash likelihood, opening up sight lines by creating a blister island or pushing the hold line forward, a stop line to encourage more caution, removing parking to improve sight lines. That certainly are all good things that would help reduce the likelihood. But if we're not reducing the speed of that approaching vehicle, the crash severity, if and when one occurs, will remain the same. There are lots of different things that could be done here, and I think people have picked up most of them. So that sort of raises the question of, when you're auditing this, which ones do you include in your report? I encourage people not to just provide one recommendation, certainly for situations like this anyway. Sometimes there's one obvious solution and you might as well just say it. But if it's a situation where there are many options, I encourage people to list them off and categorize them, as Ken mentioned, according to the safe system hierarchy. Wherever possible, we should provide some options that would be considered primary safe system treatments. So that would be ones where we are reducing the speed and all the impact angles to tolerable levels. So that might be a speed limit reduction achieved somehow, perhaps with some speed management devices on the main road, maybe even a roundabout at this location could be an option. Don't be constrained by what you think is achievable or affordable. We need to be sort of practical and realistic as auditors, but I often hear people say, oh, no, they probably won't be able to afford that. Oh, that'd be tricky for this reason. Don't count some of those sort of better or safer options out based on that type of thinking. And similarly, if you only, you might have a design background and think, well, this is what's, a good option here. I've seen this happen elsewhere. I'm going to tell them what I think would be the best thing for them to do. If for some reason that can't be achieved, then perhaps the the client or the project manager might just respond to the audit and say, well, look, we can't achieve this recommendation for this reason and this reason and this reason, and therefore not accept the audit finding. And because there's only a single recommendation that's been offered, nothing will happen to improve safety at that location. So by including multiple options, you're sort of giving the client the option to sort of move through the list from safest down and basically do the best that they can to improve safety.
Now, Jamie, one of my favorite questions, or one that pops up a lot, and I always have a wry smile on my face for a number of reasons, is what are your thoughts on convex mirrors?
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. I let me give a little story on the background of why I have my wry smile on my face. I remember as a young engineer in the Victorian Road Authority, and had a bit of a challenging situation in a rural environment, so not similar to this, but yes, I recommended the convex mirror, and then got about a half-day lecture from my manager as to why the Road Authority doesn't use convex mirrors for all of their different challenges, which you probably can add some to, but the dangers of being vandalized or out of alignment, or people being over reliant on it, or distorting the vision and the like. But what are your thoughts, Jamie?
Yeah, look, I think they have a place. They really should be used as a last resort. I think here there are lots of things that should be considered ahead of a convex mirror, and I don't think this is an appropriate location for one. It's those, perhaps those more, rural driveways where we need to do something to provide some vision. Maybe in a really highly constrained, unusual urban environment where we have some funny angles and really limited sight distance, we might consider them. But here there are lots of other things that we can do to open up sight lines that would be out of place and not very effective here, I don't think.
Yep, but I do agree with you. I think that, like, if you're at the absolute end of your tether in terms of investigated all of those things, sometimes I think it is a reasonable option. But yeah, I do have a fact sheet I've been writing up on that. I just got to finish that. But I'm going to give a prize to Carl there on bringing it up so we could have that discussion. So you get a prize, Carl.
All right, so we mentioned SISD. There are some of the other sight distances. Look, I won't go into them in great detail, but stopping sight distance and approach sight distance are perhaps the sort of most fundamental. They're actually numerically the same. The distant difference between the two is the height that we're observing to. Stopping sight distance is to an object on the road with an assumed height of 200 millimeters, and we look to provide stopping sight distance everywhere along a road. Approach sight distance is measured to the pavement level, and is particularly important at intersections where we need to observe pavement markings, or perhaps locations like mergers at mid-block locations where we need to see arrows and tapers and these types of things. Look, there are others not on the list here, such as crossing sight distance, which applies to pedestrian crossing points. So I guess as auditors at the detailed design stage, you want to have an awareness of some of these requirements, but also when you're getting out there on site, you can put yourself in some critical positions as a driver, as a pedestrian, and think about whether you feel like you've got enough space and sight distance available to you to do what you need to do. I wanted to touch briefly on rural and remote roads, which often don't sort of get a lot of attention because they're really low volume roads, generally unsealed roads like the one that you can see there, but they really are overrepresented in the crash problem. We see a really disproportionately high number of crashes based on vehicle kilometres travelled on these types of roads. And issues, on the most part, occur where something changes, something out of the ordinary happens, that we could perhaps alert motorists to in a fairly sort of cheap and easy way. So it might be a change in the pavement condition, some corrugations or a dip or some water on the road, these types of things. Or it might be the curve at the end of a long straight that we could quite easily provide some advance warning of, these types of things. So some delineation and warning, signing of some of these features where we know that crashes are more likely to occur can go a long way on these roads. So this slide lists some of the common issues found at intersections. There are prompt lists in the back of Guide to Road Safety Part 6 for intersections, and there are more general lists and others that are a great reference for auditors, and particularly people that are new to auditing, just to make sure that you're thinking about all of the right things. They are quite extensive lists, so most of the things in those lists probably won't be relevant to a particular project, but I encourage you to look to those. So at intersections, we're really thinking about conflicts between opposing streams of traffic and road users. Some of those things that we've talked about, like sight distance, making sure there are appropriate facilities for vulnerable road users to minimise the likelihood and even better, the severity of potential crashes, are some of the things we should think about. I'm happy to, if anyone has any queries or would like to discuss any of those in particular, happy to do that, but I'm conscious of time as well.
Thanks, Jamie. You've got your mid-block ones there as well, eh?
Yeah, so a similar list for mid-block locations. So mid-block, we're sort of more concerned about, I guess, the road cross-section. So within that cross-section, are we providing a safe environment for motorists, for vulnerable road users? What hazards might be present? Are we shielding them? Are batter slopes gentle enough? Are we providing delineation of changes in alignment? Are we introducing any hazards with drainage features and all of these types of things? So again, I encourage you to look to those prompt lists in the back of Part 6 of the guide.
Yep. I'll be talking a little bit more about prompt lists at the end of this session.
Happy to take any questions on these lists or anything else.
Well, you've done well, Jamie, there, and you've kept it almost exactly at a time, which is wonderful. I do have one question, and it sort of relates to some of the very specialist knowledge that's out there. Like, take for example, road safety barriers, which you have a huge wealth of knowledge and specialty, and you're into the depths of that sort of stuff, and you lead our 3-day road safety barrier design training course and the like. Is there that expectation that everybody has that level of specialty for all projects in associated with barriers, or like where do you go with that sort of stuff?
Yeah. Well, look, I guess everyone's sort of limited by their experience, aren't they? I know a thing or two about barriers, but not about other things. And I guess that sort of highlights the the importance of forming the right audit team. Any audit should be undertaken by a team of 2 or more, and you don't all have to be design experts. It can really help to have different perspectives in an audit team, but for the detailed design projects, or perhaps projects that have a particular focus, it is important to bring in the right people and experience, and that might include having people with certain technical knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the point I want to reinforce to everyone, is that build your team with, important people with skills and experience in specific areas. Generalists can help as well, give that, general questions to be asked and the like. And to address Nick's question that's just come in, do you need to cover specialists in absolutely all bases? Well, the answer is no there, because you can, if there was one, if you're doing a project and had one isolated, unique thing, you could be talking to somebody who has that specialty. Maybe they're not part of the audit team as such, and they don't do the full audit, but you get advice and you understand. It's a great way to learn about, these very, unique, specific things. But you wouldn't need to, create an audit team of 10 people with, one who's a pavement specialist, one who's a geometric specialist, one who's a barrier specialist, one who's a structural specialist. You can get people who have got some good knowledge on the major things, and then, reach out to other specialists if you need. But really forming those teams and ensuring you cover a few different bases of what is in that project is really beneficial. Wonderful. Thank you, Jamie. You've done an excellent job as usual. What we're going to do now is give everybody an opportunity to have a stretch, fill their coffee up, and we're going to come back and we're going to get back into it in 4 minutes and 30 seconds with Tuan, who's going to talk about construction site, road safety, temporary traffic management considerations in road safety audits. Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you.
Seat. So welcome back, everyone. We are now going to have a chat about construction sites and traffic management, road safety auditing, and no better person to do that than Tuan Nguyen. And Tuan, maybe if you jump to the next slide you've got there, there's Tuan's contact details. And Tuan, tell us a little bit about your background.
Yes, thanks, Ken, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to another module of the road safety audit training course, of course. And yeah, look, my name is Tuan. I've been around for quite a long time. I used to work for council, Wyndham City Council. Loved that experience. Then I joined Vic Roads, which is now Department of Transport and Planning. And then I've been with Ken for 5-6 years now. But yeah, look, as Ken has mentioned, I do have a bit of a intimate relationship with temporary traffic management. Most recently, I've been the Oz Road coordinator for the guide to temporary traffic management for kind of 5-6 years or so. So it's a fairly long time, which is now, of course, the key document that across the whole country everyone is adopting in terms of temporary traffic management. I am also a kind of a casual transport lecturer at Swinburne University. Actually, anyone here from Swinburne by any chance?
Yeah, all right, yeah. Tell us in the chat if you went to Swinburne or you currently go to Swinburne.
It might be give them a prize, Ken, special students.
Oh, is that right? I think they all might now say they went to Swinburne. Oh, there we go. We had a 2018 graduate there. Prize coming. It's a username, but I'll work out who that is.
Yes. Look, I don't think I was your lecturer back in 2018. It must have been David Nash, I think. So yeah. I took over David Nash a couple of years ago. So anyway, yeah, no, it's good that you end up being a traffic or road safety engineer. Good to see that. Yeah, and I am also the chairperson of the Standard Australia Committee called MS12, looking after a number of standards, and one of them is relating to temporary traffic management as well. And actually, since I heard you mention earlier, Ken, that we haven't given out enough prizes, so maybe this is an opportunity. People can pop on the screen and tell me which standard MS12 is looking after.
Oh my gosh. That's that is quite the trivia question. I might have to get an extra special prize if anybody can tell us what MS12 looks after, which Australian standard that is. I'm not sure anybody's going to get that, Tuan.
I would be disappointed if nobody knows, but it's a very important series of standards everyone should know as a traffic and road safety engineer.
Well, that's true, actually. It's one of the most common traffic and transport engineering standards. So you can have a guess at it if you know it. Oh, well.
Yes, there you go.
Mohammed's got it. 1742 series. What is part 5? That's a good question. But it's the whole 1742 series, isn't it?
That's right. So 1742 series have 15 parts, and it covers a range of things. Yeah, it's called a manual of uniform traffic control devices. There you go. Oh, Mohammed got it right as well. So well done.
Prize there. Now, Tuan, you've got about, what do we got? About 45 minutes. So you better jump into some content and keep giving away prizes as you go, though, all right?
Absolutely. Okay, well, let's make a start. Look, the first question I'm going to ask everyone is, why do we need road safety audit at construction site? And while you are pondering, let me play this video, and it has sound as well. So let's have a look. We struggle a bit there, trying to throw that over the fence.
And is this you undertaking a road safety audit of a construction site, is it, Tuan? That's how you fix things?
No, I didn't do an audit of this site, but yeah, look, this is a fairly small construction site, but I guess it showed that that I guess the contractor didn't consider all the road users. The cyclists fell down there, so this is somewhere in Brisbane. And yeah, look, he got a minor injury by the look of it, so just brought a few scratches here and there. But for me, audit at construction site is very important because it can have real implications. And I think I talked to my team a couple of days ago, last Tuesday. For those who live in Melbourne, you may or may not have heard of a fatality at a roadwork site as part of the North East Link. For those who don't live in Melbourne or Victoria, it's a $26 billion project. So it's a massive project. And yet there was a fatality at the work site. So for me, it's a bit of a failure. So I feel a bit uncomfortable when I hear these news. And I drove past the site. I live not far from it. And look, perhaps there's a few things that could have been done to maybe reduce the risk or prevented the crash from happening. Look, I don't know the circumstances. But yeah, look, crashes do occur at work sites, and I feel that road safety audit can play an important role in reducing the risk. With temporary traffic management, I feel that unlike other areas, the auditors probably need to have a little bit of knowledge about the topic. And on the screen there, I guess, are the key documents. So we've got the Off-Road Guide to Temporary Traffic Management, which is now harmonized across all states and territory. As I guess the base requirements that we followed. I see that there are people from Queensland and New South Wales here. So Queensland, you've got the Queensland Guide to Temporary Traffic Management, which is more or less the same as the Osh-Road Guide. However, they add on a couple of minor local things here and there. I see that there's some people from New South Wales. So you've got the TCOS, the Traffic Control at Worksite Technical Manual. So again, it is similar to the Osh-Road Guide. The content, the principle is the same. So yeah, look, you need to have a bit of an understanding and also what each jurisdiction does, because there might be some slight differences between the state and territory. There is also the Australian Standard Part 3, Traffic Control for Works on Road, that covers the traffic control devices that use at roadwork site. In New Zealand as well, I can see, I think Wendy is from New Zealand. So New Zealand, I think, hasn't adopted the Osh-Road Guide. You still got the New Zealand Code of Practice for Temporary Traffic Management that you use. But the principles and the fundamentals are more or less the same. So if you are going to be asked to do an audit for a roadwork site, it is very good idea to have a bit of understanding, have a quick look at these documents. The Osh-Road Guide is quite long. There's 10 parts. Yeah, look, it's good to have a bit of understanding. Because I understand that this has covered before. You know, road safety audit is not a compliance check. That must have covered in the past. However, yeah, look, in the context of road work site, a lot of the issue that you picked up might be relating to compliance. And I do pick them up because those non-conformances could lead to a crash or reduce the safety of all road users and road worker on site. However, road safety audit is still important because every work site is different. So the Osh-Road Guide, the Australian Standard, they don't obviously cover all the situations. So that's where I think the benefits of having road safety audits are, in terms of you go out on site and you look at things that are not covered in the guidelines or the standards. And hopefully you can pick them up and do something about it. On the screen are the 4 key stages I found quite important, and I feel that they're all important to be carried out for any construction works. The first one is you need to review the traffic management plan or traffic guidance scheme that were prepared for the work site, and that's where you can intervene and propose changes that may make a difference and reduce the risk on site. When I was the coordinator for Osh-Road, there's been a lot of talk about whether a site inspection is required, because a lot of the time the person who developed the plan sit in the office and come with some plan, and then when you go out on site, the contractor feel that it's a completely different situation. They can't implement the plan. So we talk about having, you know, recommending a site inspection. For me, as a minimum, you know, look at Street View, Google Street View, they're pretty good. Have a look at the site when you review it or when you develop a traffic management plan. Implementation, once the traffic arrangement has been set up, for me, it's quite important to make sure that it is safe for road users. We often pick up issue that after they implement it, it creates risk because of the site condition. So it's not necessarily just checking to make sure that they implement what the traffic management plan or the traffic guidance scheme says, but also other issues that may have not been picked up when the person designed the plan. Aftercare is an area where I feel that sometimes it's kind of being ignored, but yeah, the workers may not be out on site 24/7. So when they go home, we also got to make sure that the site is safe for everyone, especially, you know, during extreme weather events. I came across a situation where construction sites, you know, at night there's a extreme weather event, raining and those sort of thing, and some of the signs, some of the setup, you know, get damaged, the wind blow them away. and then the risk is there, and there's no messages telling motorists about it. So it's quite important. And then the last stage is post-construction. So after the construction is finished, it is also important to have a look at the site, drive up and down, making sure the site is safe. I keep going, and by the way, if anyone has any question, feel free to pop onto the chat screen, as Ken mentioned.
I'll ask one, Tuan, while
Sure.
others are having a think. Where do you draw that sort of line with construction sites? There's a whole lot of safety things going on. A lot of them are occupational health and safety style stuff, and some are more, you know, safety of users. Where does road safety audit sort of fit in with that in terms of occupational? Like, for example, if you saw people lifting things incorrectly or something dangerously, would you put that into the audit report, or is that something outside of the scope?
Look, it's a yes and no. You know, it's a bit of a depending on the context, and for me, this is where it's a bit unique in this area, which is you do need to have a bit of understanding about the other aspects, such as the OH&S law to know that. Look, personally, if I do see, let's say, a person walking out on site not wearing a safety vest, for example, I would pick it up. I would pick it up because it is there. But yeah, look, strictly speaking, would it have made an impact to the safety outcome of the site? Well, actually, put the worker at risk, isn't it? If he or she didn't wear the safety vest, so I would pick it up. But the other aspect, like the detailed technical information, such as the spacing of the traffic cones, you know, the number of cones, that kind of thing. Not everyone knows that. I don't even know it myself on the top of my head. So those sort of things, I don't think you, as an auditor, you need to pick them up. Yeah, does it answer the question? So David, I think, asked the question, would a road RSA physical deficiency? Yes, definitely, David. So I do that all the time. And there's a couple of examples that we get to in a minute where I've been given a TGS, Travel Guidance Scheme, to audit, and there are deficiencies. And as an auditor, you definitely need to pick them up.
Yeah, I think you're going to cover a lot of this as we tick along. I mean, really, I think as auditors, we're coming in to look at the safety of road users and workers associated with vehicles striking people predominantly, or or pedestrians walking and going into dangerous areas, or cyclists, coming off due to the construction. So when we get to the sort of things like lifting and how they're strapping their loads down, or these sort of things, that's not officially, as Tuan said, part of the scope of the audit. But if you notice these things out there, I tend to make notes in an appendix or in a covering email, as Jamie had sort of mentioned, and say, oh, by the way, here's the audit. By the way, while we're out there, we saw these other things. You should probably have a look at those as well. Just as being a safety professional, I feel that's important. Keep ticking along there.
Absolutely. Yep. Agree with that, Ken. Some more dot points about the importance of carrying out road safety audit at construction site. Because more often than not, there's a change in civil environment at the work site for the safety of the workers and the road users. There will be additional conflicts at the work site. You've got construction vehicles, coming, leaving all the times. Within a site, you might have multiple traffic management set up, which can be complicated, especially for major projects. An observation that I've got is the challenge that we've got as the industry is some contractors may not appreciate the importance of traffic management. They feel that it's a tick and flick exercise rather than really focusing on the safety of road users and the road workers. So that has been an ongoing challenge. And then low compliance for motorists, which is kind of ourselves. This may be a bit of a difficult question, but it wasn't asked the group that can someone tell me that you always follow the speed limit at a construction site?
Does everybody here, are you asking if they all follow all of the construction site speed limits? Well, they don't. I won't make them answer that in the chat. What is it? They'll take the fifth. I think they'll incriminate themselves if they do.
Well, that's right.
Dave had a question around report. So, would the Road Safety Audit Review reporting of traffic incidents? So, they document different things that occur there. We're not as auditors going to get into that, are we? Looking at their documentation in that sense.
No, not really. However, sometimes I feel that knowing a bit about the issue may help. I certainly have come across audits where the contractor rang me up and said, Tuan, we got this set up and there's been some concern, people not following the direction, leading to near misses and complaints, that kind of thing. And then I got involved and tried to understand, what the problem is. So it can be an issue for auditors. I just see David follow up with something. Is the construction site audit confined to immediate construction on risk-based vehicle traveling to the work site?
Yeah, I always talk about. I was just going to talk to that one a little bit. I always talk about thinking not just about the confined point of the works, but anything that works could influence. So if it detours vehicles down another route, you should be auditing and checking the safety of that route, that you're not sending them, all the trucks past schools or these sorts of things. On the approach to a construction site, you might have, you've got to think about it. Queuing, is the back of queue going to be an issue? And even sometimes, things off in the distance can confuse and distract from the immediate construction site. So anything to add on that, Tuan?
I agree with that, Ken. Certainly for me, and I encourage everyone who will be auditors to, look outside of construction zone on the approach and all those sort of things. And I do have a slide coming up explaining why that is the case, actually. But look, in terms of law compliance, I'm happy to admit that I don't always follow the speed limit, because when I was on a Monash freeway, for example, and I've got a B double behind me, sometimes I feel that, look, he's only 10 meters away from me, and it is challenging. And this picture here is not an official sign, but it is used in Melbourne in the past. And you know what? This is the most effective sign in terms of making sure people follow the speed limit, actually, when they know that they may get hit with a fine. And look, managing speed at road work site is important because, as we know, the severity, the injury outcome, if in case of a crash, if people don't slow down, is certainly very high. The photo there that I took last year, this is those things that I found, and I report them when I see them, but this sort of issue where you have, conflicting speed limit, it doesn't help. However, in the Off-Road Guide to Temporary Traffic Management, there is a section discussing at length about making sure if you want people to travel at the lower speed limit, you don't just put in a sign, because unfortunately, people may not follow that sign. And if you, as a project manager or an auditor, found that people don't reduce the speed limits, you've got to do something else. And there are a few, I guess, tools. One thing that I feel we don't use a lot, maybe it's a bit of a culture thing, is the portable speed hump. When I was at Vic Roads, I approved a couple of these, and they are quite effective. If on this road here, Dynon Road, you want people to really do 40, perhaps putting in a couple of these portable road hump. And when people see this physical device on the road, they probably will slow down rather than just a sign. Portable chicane is another idea that came up a couple of years ago. So this is not the best picture because this is kind of having an actual construction site, but you can introduce a deviation on the road itself, so forcing motorists to to kind of slow down and navigate through the work site. This way you ensure that people do slow down. Stuart made a comment, a conflicting speed sign. Yes, absolutely, and we don't want that to occur out at the work site. And this is where I think we touch on about, you know, whether we should only confine our audit to the work site. My experience in recent years is with more traffic in our capital cities, congestion is a huge problem, and sometimes people do a bit of work on the side of a highway, thinking that, yeah, look, I'm going to just close the lane for a couple of hours, thinking that nothing's going to happen. Well, traffic can quickly build up, and on the screen there, I certainly came across example of trucks in particular that need a lot longer stopping distance that just ram straight into the back of queue, creating severe injury to motorists. So that is another important consideration that as an auditor, I feel that you always need to check. Other key considerations, I mentioned standards and guidelines, review site conditions. Every site is different. Ensure consistency, conflicting message, like what you saw earlier, the 40 and 60k speed limit signs. Consider both the workers and the traveling public. I took this photo not long ago, and I'm quite impressed with this contractor who was thoughtful enough to put a portable ramp there for people on wheelchair or people on prams. Most of the time, you know, they close the footpath, they just say, you know, bugger off, go elsewhere, without considering, you know, all different group of road users, people with disability, vision impaired people, those sort of things. So bear that in mind when you do audits. A couple of examples that I came across over the years. The one on the left, I guess we kind of touch on it. The one on the right, you do encounter these sort of smaller construction sites, and I guess in practice you may not be asked to do an audit for such a small site, but we can see that in this case, you know, there was little consideration for pedestrians. I mean, if you're on a wheelchair, what do you do? I mean, there's a traffic controller boxes as well. So it will be difficult for the person in a wheelchair to go around this little dig out on the footpath, I guess. A couple of other examples, and the comments on the picture on the left and the right. I took the photo on the right last year on Thompson Road. Not sure whether you can see the details there. I guess we're waiting for people to kind of thinking about it. I mean, I can talk about the one on the right-hand side. I was a bit disappointed to see that, you know, look, you drive through this fairly short section of the road and you got 60, you got 40, and you got 70. You know, what does that mean? It certainly doesn't help. The one on the left, the key important message is, you know, 40k. However, it's covered by this pedestrian sign. So not a very good setup. And the comments on this one, the group is a bit quiet. I'm not sure whether they're still with us, Ken. Maybe we should entice people with some prizes or something. All right, Nick jumped in, merge left. Yes, that's right. Conflicting message over there. You close the left lane and yet you're telling to merge left. What do people think about the middle sign there? Lachlan picked it up. Yes, and this is a T intersection too, isn't it? Not sure why the contractor decided to put 100k on a fairly residential street at a T intersection. If I live in that house, I probably would be a bit worried knowing that, oh, there's 100k speed limit sign there outside my house. Routes have speed limit increase inappropriate. Yes, that's right. And then, yes, of course, the VMS. So a bit of a contradicting message over there that was in Sydney and was fairly quickly picked up by social media. And yeah, the contractor quickly learned the mistake. Specifically here, I don't understand why they didn't put it on the nature strip here. It looks like there's a lot of room. They could have easily put a VMS on the left-hand side instead on the bike path.
Sorry, Twan, I had a little audio issue there, but you've been ticking along.
You can hear me now?
Yep, got you now. Sorry. Yeah, so lots of good comments coming in there. Let's keep moving along.
Well, this slide here, actually, this might be another prize opportunity, Ken, because you can see there are two versions of the stop sign. Which one is correct? Is it the round one or the octagon shapes? All right, Tom was the quickest of the round one, Muhammad as well.
That's it.
The round one is correct. Yes, that's right. Now, this is a bit more tricky. What is the difference between the round version and the octagon version?
Shape, Twan, shape. That's not what you mean, though, is it?
Permanent and temporary. Yeah, look, I'll probably give Muhammad a prize. Ken, he's kind of on the right track there. Look, I didn't know what the differences were either until one day I've learned from it. But yeah, look, the octagon is for a permanent setting, but also as a driver or as a motorist, if you see this octagon shape stop sign, it doesn't matter whether it's mounted low or high, left, right, you must stop. Legally, you must stop. So you think about an intersection, you see that octagon shaped sign, even if it fell down the road, you know, or you can put against the post or whatever, you must stop. Whereas the round version, if this traffic controller kind of put the sign down on the ground, even though as a motorist you can still see it, you don't have to stop. It's only effective, you only need to legally stop when the sign is kind of put in front of you. Another similar use is at railway level crossing. You've got a boom gates. On those boom gates, you've got a round version of the stop sign, not the octagon, because when the boom gate is up, you can still see the stop sign, but because it's round, you kind of, don't need to stop. Anyway, that's an interesting fact. But yes, the right version is the correct one. Just one or two slides about traffic controllers. Very high risk area for me. I've been involved in a couple of detailed investigation for traffic controller who injured or killed at a work site. And it is recognized as at a national level. And in terms of hierarchy of control, we want to eliminate the risk. And if you read the Oxford Guide to Temporary Traffic Management, which all jurisdiction has adopted, you will see that the default control device for traffic nowadays is the use of these portable traffic control devices. The most commonly one that I start seeing out there is the porta boom, kind of the boom gate type shown on the right-hand side. And you can see that it uses a round stop sign, which is good. Some contractor has the octagon version, actually. So if you do an audit and you see one that has an octagon stop sign attached there, tell them that is incorrect. And if they have any question, ask them to talk to me, actually. I will explain it to them. The portable traffic signal is also widely used now at road work site. And the benefit of using these devices is the traffic controllers don't have to be out there, actually, you know, standing in front of traffic, stopping vehicles, which is a high risk activity. Another device that when you do audit, you may want to discuss and highlight is the use of truck mount attenuators. In recent years, we certainly have used a lot of them at road work site. Great tools to protect the workers. It is more or less a mandatory requirement on high-speed road, I think, so anything above 80k speed limit. But I came across a situation where even on 70 kilometers or 80 kilometers per hour road, the use of truck mount attenuator is really, really good. I took this photo on an 80k road to protect this work vehicle doing wet spraying. And they are quite effective in protecting both the road workers and the road users as well. So on the right hand side, I'm going to play this quick video to show you a crash that occurred a number of years ago on the Western Highway, actually, in Victoria. So that car there slammed straight into the TMA, which was used to protect the work vehicle just behind it. And if the TMA wasn't there, I guess that car could have plowed straight into the work vehicle, and the outcome would have been different for the road worker. So when I do audits, I always highlight and pick up these sort of things, you know, making sure traffic controller are not on the road, use portable traffic control devices, and where appropriate, use TMA. They can save lives. Yeah, look, so look, temporary traffic management is a very big area, so we definitely don't go into the details. However, I've got a couple of examples and see whether, even without, some of you may or may not have, you know, the intimate knowledge of temporary traffic management, but as an auditor, you can still pick up things that may or may not related to the technical requirements. Oh, Kevin, a good drawing by a white car. Okay. But yeah, let's go through a couple of examples and see whether anyone can pick up anything. So this one here, it's in St Kilda in Melbourne, but I can explain the context. The green area is the construction zone. On the left-hand side here is the St Kilda Pier, a very, very popular tourist kind of attraction. They are doing a bit of a renovation. And at the moment, pedestrians and cyclists can ride and walk along this path here. And then they got a construction site, they got a storage area here. And then the contractor said, look, they need a bit more room. So they're proposing to kind of close off that area and divert pedestrian and cyclists around the work site like this. So as an auditor, would you pick up anything just looking at this plan?
Okay, let's have a look and see what comes in. I think it's a really good example there to show that it's not only on the road sort of stuff. The path as well is very much something in scope. All road users we're thinking about with this sort of stuff there. So let's see if anything comes in there.
And I assume that the text is not too small for people on the screen. I think.
No, I think it's okay. No control at entry to the site of Pier Road. Okay.
Yes,
so
I think that's a good picked up. Yeah, so that's the gate there, and it appears that, and that's spot on, Kevin. It appears that they just have this gate here, and you've got pedestrian and cyclists going up and down. I mean, when you've got construction vehicle going in and out, you know, how you manage that. Very good point. And this is a very, very busy area as well during summer. Anything else?
That's a good one from Kevin there. So price. And I think I really like the way Kevin's sort of thinking through, well, how is this going to operate? You know, okay, so vehicles are going to be coming in and out of that site. And now we've created that sort of specific conflict point. How's that going to be managed? So that's the kind of thinking road safety auditors do. We've got Mohammed there saying no detour sign on Pier Road. And then Nicholas also saying no detour notifications along the marina. So talking about, are we giving sort of good advanced notice of the detours?
Yes, and they are both of those pickup are good in my view. So I assume Nick and Muhammad, you're talking about, you know, people on Jekka Boulevard. You know, I might accidentally say, oh, okay, let's enter this road. And then, oh, you know, I can't go anywhere anymore because this road is now closed as well. And how do you kind of let these people know? And they've got a U-turn somehow. And during summer, I can see, you know, hundreds of people walking up and down here. You get in and you realize you can't go anymore. You get out. It's very, very messy, isn't it?
Yeah. Good example.
Very good responses. This is another one. on the Hume Freeway, I put a leave on the screen for a minute or two so that people can digest it. But generally what happening is this on Hume Freeway at the border of New South Wales, and the contractor need to do some work on the overpass, and they sent me this plan. I said, Tuan, you think there's any issue with it? There is one glaring issue, so I hope somebody will pick it up, and that person probably deserve a prize, Ken.
So let me just clarify for everyone what we're seeing here. So there's some works happening on this structure, and they're closing off that lane where the work's happening on the overpass on Melrose Drive, but also on the freeway, which is below where the works are happening, in case something drops on the freeway. Okay, yeah,
that's correct. Kevin, I think Kevin deserves a prize, Ken.
Oh yeah, so stop control on the freeway.
So I was a bit shocked and very disappointed that this company proposing to have a person, if you read the text here, traffic controller to hold traffic on 110 kilometers freeway. I mean, we all know the Hume Freeway is very busy, a lot of cars, a lot of trucks. And the Off-Road Guide clearly say that you must not use a person to control traffic on motorways. I mean, look, put ourselves in the situation of traffic controller. I wouldn't jump out in front of a BW on a Hume Freeway to stop them. Ivan also taught no escape route for traffic controller on the overpass. That's a very good picked up, Ivan. I mean, if you still got prizes, Ken, I think he probably deserve one too.
Yeah, and Stuart's put in there no PTS, which I'm not 100% sure what Stuart's referring to.
Portable traffic signal.
Oh, sorry, gotcha. So that's what that was going to be the other one, to just say that's what you'd be proposing on the freeway if you wanted to control, like stop the vehicles, as opposed to having a person out there. You'd arrange that. That's even the case if you are getting the speed down, or you're making it 40, but even though, because it's a high speed road, a high volume road, you're going to opt for that higher control.
That's right. So certainly in this case, you can definitely use a portable traffic signal or one of those portable wooden gates to manage traffic, rather than having a person jumping out in front of vehicles.
Right.
So yep, no, very good picked up. Last example. Look, I want. Look, generally, what happening is they need to do a bit of a widening at the intersection, and I use this example because there's a dropped off that I created as shown here, and it's on the major highway, 100 kilometers an hour, and I was contacted to consider the best option to I guess ensuring that traffic don't get onto this drop off, which is about 400 mil Jeep, so it's fairly big dropped off. Look, I won't go into the detail of this one, but it's another consideration when you go out there and look at the site, making sure it is safe. Not only for the workers, and this is a good example for aftercare, because they don't work at night. So how do we make sure that at night motorists is aware of this dropped off and navigate through the work site safely? I mean, in this case, the outcome was to reduce the speed limit, obviously, to 40, and I did recommend a couple of portable speed humps, road humps as well, to make sure people do slow down. Because we can imagine that it's a very deep dropped off. If you do end up in there, it can create a bit of a situation. This slide here, I just added on yesterday actually, because I came back from Newcastle last week, and I feel that this is another thing that, as an auditor, you may or may not picked it up, but I would pick it up, and actually I encourage you to pick that up as well. Actually, very quickly, can anyone tell me why I pick up this issue? What is the issue here? Yes, that's correct, Kevin. You are right. Way too much info. If you look at the VMS, and this is a worrying trend whenever I drive past a road work site, you see VMS everywhere, but they got too much information. They got, and then, just too much. And to me, this is a fairly important message. It talks about some weight and width limit. The truck in front of me here in the photo, he looks pretty heavy. If you miss that message, I don't know, if you go straight ahead over the bridge, will it collapse something? I was a bit worried when I was behind him, actually. In terms of solution, very quickly, font size, that's right. That's another one. It's too skinny. You literally just cannot read it, especially when you are driving. Anyone have a quick solution before we move on? I'm kind of making sure we can cover a few more slides, that's all. Quick solution, anyone? What would you do instead of having this sign? More VMS, yes, that could be the, but making sure you space out the message, all right? So you don't have more VMS with the same message because people still can't read it. Can be entered in 2 slides. Yeah, look, they already have it on 2 screen. Provide a detour, yes. Look, my thought afterward was, in this case, if it is such a critical message, just put on a static sign. Have a static sign to say, look, if you are more than 6.9 ton or whatever, not 69 ton, is it? Not sure. Is there a dot there? Can't read it.
It'd be 6.9, I would assume.
Yeah. Have it on a static sign. The static sign is probably cheaper than hiring a VMS and put it here for weeks anyway. So max 2 screen. The first screen should tell people what the problem is, and the second screen should tell people what to do. Maximum 8 words, 3 lines per screen. So look, in summary, working on road is a high-risk activity. So when you do an audit, make sure you identify the potential risk. Every site is different. Making sure you implement and removing the plans in accordance with the process. Always suggest the use of portal traffic control devices. Always recommend the use of TMAs. Check and manage NOQs and consider all road users, people on wheelchair, people vision impaired. Well, we don't go back to this. This is what how we used to manage traffic at road work site. Unfortunately, and I leave this short little clip for everyone to digest. Unfortunately, in some places, this is the standard that they have. Things you find on TikTok.
Amazing.
So I'll probably leave it at that, Ken. So look, I hope that give people a bit of a basic kind of understanding and about the risk and what to do. It's an important area, and I strongly encourage people who work in this area to look at temporary traffic management and making sure it's safe for everyone.
Yeah, thanks, Tuan, and you've done a good job of covering a whole lot there. Nicholas, not sure what's worse there. And that one on the left there, the caution road works ahead. I assume that was one of your construction sites from your time at Wyndham City Council there, Tuan, back in the day.
That's right.
It's a really interesting space, the temporary traffic management, road safety auditing. I think Tuan's done a good job showing you all of these varied things. I would sort of flag that it is one of the most highly litigious areas associated with road safety and road safety auditing. I give this sort of general warning to new auditors or people going through the course. It's sort of, if you're going to be sued for doing a road safety audit, odds on it'll be for a construction site road safety audit. So just be aware of that. And a bit like the design one we talked about, if you're going to be doing this, you need somebody who really knows the code of practice, or the whatever jurisdiction you're in, somebody who really knows the details of it. And those people, there are lots of people who really know the details. We've got to get all of that right. But if it's not something that you know the details of, you can still contribute meaningfully to the audit by asking those questions. How are people going to get in here? If the shop's over here, the shops are over there, how are they going to get from that side of the road to that side of the road? Or, are people going to know, is it clear which way they're going to go? General sort of common sense safety questions contributed in amongst the details of the specific standards and codes and guidelines is a really wonderful mix. That's how we'll get safe construction sites. So thank you, Tuan. And of course, Jamie and Tuan's contact details are in the slides, and we can provide those to you at any point if you need. But I'm just going to cover off a little bit of something else here as we go before the end of the session. Sorry, I'm just going to share my screen here. Thanks again, Tuan.
Yeah, thanks, everyone. And as Ken has mentioned, if you have any questions or anything, that you need assistance with, feel free to contact me. It's a fairly big area.
Great. Thanks, Tuan. So the final thing, I just want to briefly mention the prompt lists. Jamie mentioned them. They used to be called checklists. They're now called prompt lists. And they sit at the back of the Austroads Guide to Road Safety Part 6, which is the Road Safety Audit Guide. And there's a version, or the guide is available from Austroads. All the Austroads guides are free. You can download it there, or we've popped it into the learning management system. But in the back of that, or in Appendix H, you'll see that they have these sort of general questions to start, and that's helping you ask questions of whoever you're doing the audit for to get context of the project. They're just a guide, a few questions you could ask, so you really understand the scope of the project they're doing. And then prompt lists H3 to H7 cover off things you can use as a road safety auditor to prompt your thinking. So we purposely changed from calling them checklists to calling them prompt lists because we didn't want people to think, okay, if I just go through each of these questions, I've covered off absolutely everything that could happen out there. That's not the case, okay? But they do really prompt you in thinking in a whole lot of different areas that could contribute risk in a design or in an existing project. And you can see that they're sort of broken up into local alignment, general aspects, intersections, walking, cycling, signs, lines, and lighting and the like. And the prompt lists come with these columns, and the columns are sort of the stages of audit. So if you're in the detailed design, you're looking at a detailed design and you're auditing that, you can dig into these questions here under these different categories, and you'll get lots of questions that just prompt your thinking. And you may need to follow these up. You may need to check with others, or you may, for a lot of the time, say, well, that's not applicable at all for this project because these are generic prompt lists. So I stress here, they are thought starters only, but they're really good as you start to develop your skills as a road safety auditor. They help you think of a whole lot of things you may not have thought about before. You've got to stand back. You've got to look at the project. You've got to be logical about it. It may not be covered in there, but they'll help you. Lots of things will be not applicable because these are trying to cover off motorways, local streets, roundabouts, bike paths, all sorts of things. So lots of things might not be applicable. Another important one is they're just for you, just for your use in the background. They help you work through stuff, think about things. You don't actually hand these in as part of the audit report. The audit report only has the things that you believe represent the possibility of injury or death to a member of the public or a worker associated with road crashes. But that's all you hand in. You don't hand in these prompt lists like some sort of checklist to prove you've thought about a whole lot of things. Okay, so I just was flagging those. You might want to use those when you get to the final assignment and you're going out, you're looking at a site, looking at a design, but you may you may be able to find your required issues quite easily for that one. Okay, just in our last couple of minutes, I want to point out this document again. I mentioned this. The reason I'm doing this is the quiz you've got coming up is really focusing in on understanding the difference between a primary treatment and a supporting treatment. So our primary treatments, remember this definition, they virtually eliminate the potential of fatal and serious injury occurring. Supporting treatments are going to improve road safety, but they're not going to virtually eliminate death and serious injury for that crash type. Okay? There are examples in this document, which you can get from the learning management system, of primary treatments, supporting treatments. But a couple of other things I just want to cover off. The likelihood of crash and the severity of crash. Things that influence the likelihood of crash are things like traffic signals, because people see them and they're less likely to crash. But there's very much ability for somebody to run through a set of traffic signals, a red light, and crash at the same speed, the same angle. So that's the likelihood. If we put up traffic signals, it addresses the likelihood of crash. To address the severity of crash, we've really got to be talking about things that get the speed down, or it's really got to get the speed down, change the angle of crash, possibly like a roundabout. The angle of crash would be better, or a barrier system where you hit the barrier system and run along the barrier system, severities down in those incidents. Remember in module 1, we talked about safe system threshold speeds, that 30 kilometers per hour for pedestrian or cyclist crashes, the 50 kilometer per hour for that right angle crash at an intersection, and 70 kilometers per hour for the head-on crash. We're talking about getting speeds below those to get our primary safe system alignment. I think that's sort of just a little recap there. You're probably going to want to, for this quiz, have the PDF of module 1 open. That's going to help you. Possibly even get that Austroads Safe System Assessment Framework document out of the learning management system and have it ready to go. You can have a go at the one, maybe get 3 chances at it. If you're struggling, and this is probably one where a few people will struggle, I really encourage you to reach out and get some of that one-on-one coaching support to sort of talk through these specifics to give you that clarity so you can have another go at the quiz. If you're really struggling on it, it is important that you don't feel overwhelmed and stressed about it. Just get in contact. We've got wonderful senior road safety auditors who really enjoy helping people understand some of these nuances. So reach out for that assistance if you're struggling. All right, and log in a little bit early before the next session for a chance to win a prize. We'll also be giving out awards for the research assignment. We're just finalising a few of the details of that. People were very impressed with what came in. So thank you very much. We covered a lot today. We've given out a huge amount of prizes, so well done to all the prize winners. And we look forward to catching you at the next session. Thanks, everyone.